It is the Big Ten, and it's Maryland. The Terrapins.
Yep, so Maryland last year, 4-8 in the Big Ten. Mike Loxley and company finishing near the rear and trying to have a better season this year as they kind of just get lost in the shuffle of the Big Ten, especially with a lot of the newer teams. I mean, I think they fall even further in your hey, rattle off number of teams that you can name in the Big Ten. I think that now they're a couple slots back from where they typically have been, because now you're thinking about Oregon first maybe, or Washington, or even USC or Cal. But the Terps looking to improve drastically and not finish ahead of only Purdue in the final Big Ten standings like they did last year. So taking a look at their schedule for this season, start off on Saturday, August the 30th. And again, this exercise is just looking ahead. No breakdown, no official prediction, no nothing other than just who does Maryland play this year and what's interesting about it. So FAU right out of the gates in College Park on Saturday, August the 30th. The following week, they are back at home, as they will be for the first 3 games of the year, with perhaps one of the easier schedules in the country. Maybe not. We'll see, I guess. But Northern Illinois rolls in, followed by Towson on Saturday, September the 13th. So FAU, NIU, and Towson, your first 3 games of the year for the Maryland Terrapins. Their September slate is not over just yet, as the following week, 4 games in a row, they will play at Wisconsin, their first road trip of the year. Also start to get into Big Ten play. So that will occur on Saturday, September the 20th, will be their 4th straight game, and then they will head into a bye week in that final weekend of September. So FAU, NIU, Towson on the at home, and then they go to Wisconsin, and that will be their big conference and first road trip test.
Yeah, they should be 3-1 bare minimum out of this first 4 games. I'm curious to see Florida Atlantic this season. I know that they've been kind of pushing some resources to the table on their football program, but I still think it's going to be some time. They should be 3-1, and this schedule is not overall just awful for them, but Maryland, since they've joined the Big Ten, has just kind of been there, Craig. And but yeah, I mean, if you don't beat FAU, NIU, and Towson before you got to go to Camp Randall, I think Mike Loxley's got some problems.
Yeah, they're over under, I think, on wins. Last I looked was 4.5. So you think like 3 of them could happen in the first 3 weeks, and that doesn't bode very well if everybody else sees that in Vegas and they're like, yeah, 4.5 sounds about right. It means you're thinking they can squeeze out a couple more wins in their final 8 games. But what does that look like? Well, after they take that first break, they return on Saturday, October the 4th, and they have a 4-3-5 schedule. So one of the more balanced schedules that we've had with these 2 bye-week slates. And in that 3-game middle section, they will be back at home for the 4th time in 5 games as they play host to the Washington Huskies. The following week, home again, as they will welcome in Nebraska on Saturday, October the 11th. And then look at me smash. And the final game before their second bye week, they will travel all the way across the country to the Rose Bowl to take on the UCLA Bruins. And so they are 7 games in, 5 of them at home, and then trips to Wisconsin and UCLA.
Yeah, Washington, I think, will be much better this year. I'm a believer in Nebraska, even though Smokey isn't. I'm not a believer in UCLA. So these are tough games, I think, but all these should be winnable. I mean, Wisconsin, Washington, Nebraska, UCLA are all in the same spot, at least from last year to this year, that Maryland is, right?
Yeah.
If any of those 4 schools have, if 2 of those 4, you would expect 2 of those 4 schools to have an uptick, whoever it might be, whether it's another year with Wisconsin and if Fickle, or Washington with Jed Fish second year. Think about Matt Rule year 3. They could lose every one of those games, and yet again, I think there's just such a soft midsection of the Big Ten. It's hard to kind of figure out what they're going to do.
So they come back 5 games to play down the stretch, and they will start that campaign at home. Number 17, I guess, preseason, Indiana Hoosiers. So that'll be homecoming for the Terrapins, as Indiana, a game that you could chalk up as a likely win, right? You're playing Indiana, and now, well, maybe you should put Towson on homecoming. I don't know. But the Hoosiers and Kurt Signetti roll into College Park. So that is 6 of their first 8 games are at home. And they still have a 4.5 win total, according to Vegas. Then they hit the road for back-to-back road games, as they will take on Rutgers out in New Jersey on Saturday, November the 8th. And then the following week, they are at Illinois out in Champaign. They come back on Saturday, November 22nd to College Park for their final home game of the year. Lord knows they've had enough at this point, as they get the Michigan Wolverines. And then the final game period of the year, unless they are able to make the postseason, they will travel to Detroit and Ford Field, home of the Lions, to take on Michigan State. So back-to-back games to close out the year against the Michigan schools. And I mean, look at that. I mean, Indiana, obviously very good last year. Illinois made some noise. Michigan, be tough. Michigan State, they regain more form as they settle in further under Jonathan Smith, and then, Rutgers as well in there. So it's a grab bag of schools, but you can see why you're super optimistic about the start. And then after that, you go, okay, damn, where are all the rest of the wins coming from here?
Yeah.
So Mike Loxley had a nice start, as far as being a guy with a lot of leeway and has been able to have a lot of years under his belt, had some winning seasons. But now, after last year's 4-8, you gotta win some games, and this schedule will make that tough to do. So we'll see if they can get back to more of what he was doing in the years prior, winning 7-8 games. And I think you do that, then you'll be happy given the schedule.
How many logos?
Logos, I'm going to say 3.
Michigan,
Washington, and Nebraska.
Well, yeah,
Nebraska's a logo.
It's a logo.
It's a logo.
It is a logo.
No offense to Wisconsin and Michigan State, who are probably right outside that, but yeah, it's a logo. But yeah, Michigan, Washington, Nebraska, certainly logos.
We discussed the Big 12, and there's just a lot of teams that all could be about the same, because you never know from year to year. And the way it's been, you hope that maybe 3 or 4 teams will step up and be 9, 10, 11 win teams year in and year out. The Big 10 is a huge conference. And right now it seems like, you have Ohio State, you have Penn State, you have Oregon, and maybe Michigan. But they've got a lot. You could get lost if you're not careful, losing the wrong game. Maybe that's the way in every Power 4 conference. But this conference, I don't know how you go 1 through 18 and try to figure that out after about 3 or 4.
Yeah, no, I don't think you do either. And, given the amount of roster flux that happens, and the Big Ten, like you said, it's got the soft middle section in it. It's the me of conferences.
No.
Yeah, but we'll see. That's the thing I think, compared to, you compare the Big Ten to the Big 12. Like, what you'll see in the Big Ten in the middle is
I'm not comparing them with because the Big Ten is so much like a monster.
Yeah. It's a but as far as the quality of teams and the week in and week out games, the Big Ten, because they have gigantic schools, is going to get a lot more attention. But if you want to watch Big Ten games week in and week out, you might get a little bit bored, when it comes to the middle of it, because you're going to have a bunch of teams that are like, man, it's where the Big 12, man, it's a street fight every week, and it's fun. And you don't know what's going to happen. The Big Ten seems more, at least now, more than any conference, is a little fait accompli, that you kind of know what's going to happen. It's going to be one of 3 or 4 schools at the top.
That's because the Big 12 has 0 national, big-time blue blood brands. They're all even. So every game, you feel like even Houston can beat Utah. And in the Big Ten, you don't think that Rutgers typically has a chance in hell of beating Ohio State or Oregon or Michigan. And so any given year, maybe Washington or Michigan State. So I think that's the difference, and that's the big difference in those schools or in those leagues, is they've got all of the top brands historically. That's where all of them are now. They're all there, except for the ones that are in the ACC still. And there's 2 or 3 of those. But yeah, I think there's a soft belly, but there's a really stout top. I was saying this yesterday about the Big Ten. That influx of the Pac schools really made them more interesting, because it was always just Michigan and Ohio State, and sometimes Michigan State, and sometimes Wisconsin, but pretty much just Ohio State and then Michigan. And now you throw Oregon in the mix, and okay, that's interesting. Throw Washington in there, thinking of them from a couple of years ago before they joined the Big Ten, and that's interesting. So, yeah, I mean, they do not play USC. They do not play Oregon. They don't play Ohio State. They don't play Penn State. And I should say Penn State in that Big Ten conversation as well. You'd say that they're always in that discussion. But it was kind of a 3-team race, and then who's the 4th or 5th out of an Indiana and Illinois, whoever. Yeah. And, man, shoot, now you got Indiana's making the freaking playoff and back-to-back national championships and these influx of West Coast schools. Like, there's an interesting mix there. So, yeah, there is the schedule for Maryland, and they do avoid some of those big-name brands. I mean, they avoid 4 of them, USC, Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, but still just a 4.5 win total last I looked. But there is their path to whatever is in store.